everyone, it's me, the Johnny Monkey again, and yeah, I know, it's been a while since I've done anything VGT related, which is why I'm making this update video. Okay, so putting aside minor bits like the fact that the past few weeks have been busy, or the fact that I did try to record an update, but I did it live action, and it came out horribly, and confirmed that I really can't do the live action stuff anymore, not to camera at least. The main reason for the delay is that, like I said in the last update, I'm still trying to experiment with the style and just try and find a way to get my creative juices working on VGT again. But I want to assure you that I haven't been spending this entire month idling and procrastinating. I've been experimenting with video formats, I've gotten back into animation, so I'm starting to do some experiments with that. So yeah, hopefully when I do get VGT back up and running again, it will be better than ever. But I didn't just want to say, hey, here's an update guys, then leave it at that. So because I haven't reviewed any video game narrative stuff for a while, well, save for the brief review I did of Xenoblade Chronicles X on Monkey Broadcast, which is still going, and you can still watch it, by the way, and as usual, any questions you can provide would be a huge help. But because I haven't done any VGT narrative reviews for a while, I am quickly going to do a narrative review of Street Fighter V! This may seem like an odd choice, but I will admit I've had a strange fondness for the series for a long time. Partially because of just how insane the plot can be sometimes when you actually look into it, but I will admit, I do like the characters, or at least I like how the characters have grown over the years, and there are one or two interesting concepts in there once you start looking. Plus, come on, who doesn't love Hadouken? I will admit that this review is basically first impressions, purely because at the time I haven't been able to play the game for very long. I've only been able to try a demo and then watch the cutscenes on YouTube, and also because, well, the DLC is meant to add extra bits to the story, but I'll get into that a little later. Okay, so the basic premise, Street Fighter V is more like Street Fighter Alpha in that there's no big tournament this time. The characters are all just following their own separate agendas, but Bison himself, the main villain, is back. He looks slightly older now, but he is still just as powerful as ever, and he's now mobilizing a brand new plan called Project Chains. Not quite sure what it is at the moment, because it's all being mysterious and hush-hush, but basically, he's planning to take over the world, possibly using members of his doll unit, which is this strange unit he has of brainwashed female bodyguards. Cammy used to be a member of them. It's kind of weird. But the point is, Bison is now using them for some grand plan known as Project Change, and that's really about it. And if that sounds a bit anticlimactic, it's one of the major problems with Street Fighter V. But focusing more on the positives first, because a lot of people have basically been saying that the story mode is completely worthless in Street Fighter V, but there are some positive points to it. One of the things I do like is that there is still a sense of continuity and progression. When Capcom said that the roster is entirely focused on competitive play, that's why there's only about 10 or so characters, and a lot of the mainstays like Sagat, Sakuroi, Honda, etc. have been abandoned. I will admit, I was worried that the story mode was just going to be vague lip service or just repeating character tropes over and over again, but most of the characters actually do get some advances. They're put into new situations, they get to develop new bonds and interactions with different people, and there is a lot of cool characterization in this. There are some nice little friends, like Cammy having a strong friendship with Jonin, maybe more depending on how you read it. Charlie going on his own version of Two-Face's character arc from The Dark Knight. And one of the most interesting things, and one of the things that makes me ridiculously happy, is that Zangief, or Zangief as we have to say it now, Zangief and Dhalsim have now taken up mentor roles. That may not sound like much, but one of my biggest problems with the Street Fighter series is that there are so many side characters like Zangief, Honda, Blanca, who are just pushed to the side and repeat the same plot lines over and over and over again. Like, for the longest time, every time I played Zangief's mode, it was just such an annoying chore because it was going through the exact same, oh, Zangief wants to show off his muscles for Marvel Ocean. It's like, oh, for God's sake, can't you think of any other plot lines for this guy? Like, seriously? I'm not expecting, like, deep Shakespearean character development, but I would like something new. And in this case, something has happened. And in this case, there is a positive change. Both Zangief and Dhalsim are now older, they're wiser, and they can now teach the next generation. And yeah, the idea of muscle spirit sounds goofy, but he kind of makes it almost noble and endearing. And I just like the fact that it's acknowledging that at this point, Zangief is a veteran to the fighting game, and he is someone that is worthy of respect. He's not just the goofy Russian we keep around because someone's memorized his moveset and we don't want to disappoint that crowd. Other positives I can mention are little bits of world building, and what I mainly mean by that is basically, it's gonna sound ridiculous, but Rashid, who is a new character, the way he gathers information on Shadowloo is by asking people in a chat room. I'm not kidding. He basically goes to the Street Fighter equivalent on Twitter and goes, hey guys, know anything about Shadowloo? And he gets like a series of different responses. It may sound goofy, but in fairness, that's what would happen these days. I mean, when you've got access to the worldwide network of information on your phone, access to contacts with hundreds if not thousands of people, of course you would ask these people for information. I mean, it may not be the most subtle approach. I mean, sod's law, you're gonna run into a troll who secretly works for Shadowloo, but at the very least, it has a nice bit of realism, or at the very least, this nice idea of what you would do if you're on the ground level. I mean, not every Street Fighter character can have secret connections to the government or military organizations and what have you. And the final positive I will mention is that the English voice cast is absolutely terrific. All of the actors from Street Fighter 4 have returned, and I've gotta say, I have always loved that cast. Like, the only voice I'm not particularly fond of is David Mallow as Akuma, and even then, I blame it more on the casting and directorial decisions rather than Mallow's performance itself. It's kind of, instead of the deep, serious voice, they decided to go for this kind of monsterly growl. But yeah, minor point. Their voices are still here, and it's still the same level of quality. It's absolutely fantastic, and yeah, I don't care what anyone says. As far as I'm concerned, these guys are the definitive Street Fighter cast. Kyle Hebert is Ryu now, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, no matter what else I say about the Street Fighter V storyline, it honestly does have a lot of potential. It continues the series in terms of continuity, it shows a passage of time, it builds on the world, it builds little bits and pieces on the characters, well, most of them anyway. It has a lot of potential to be a really good story. But it does have problems. The first I want to quickly mention is that you'll notice I keep saying most of the time. And that's because, well, 90% of the cast do get small development in some cases, whether it's just them interacting with a new character, like Chun-Li trying to be, if not a mother figure, at the very least a big sister figure to this Chinese orphan by sharing the details of a flashback. But bizarrely enough, the main characters like Ryu and Ken, they don't get anything. I mean, well, actually, Ryu's the one that's the worst off, because Ken doesn't get any major development, but at the very least, his scenes are a lot of fun because he spends most of the time with his wife Eliza. The two of them have some really fun interactions, and although that just could be the fact that Ken and Eliza are my one true pairing, in the fact that I just love this couple and see what they do. And in fact, minor note, this is a question I want to pose to all of you guys, just in case there's something I missed. How many actual married couples are there in gaming? Just as a general rule, not people who like coyly tease about maybe getting together, will they, won't they, and just having like one vague kiss at the end. No, I mean actual couples who are in love, get married, and then have a kid the same way Ken and Eliza do. Like actual married couples who are in a firm relationship. Because I was actually thinking for a long time about doing the best couples so I could talk about this. And the number is actually surprising. Like, I actually struggled to think of any husband and wife relationships in games, preferably ones where the wife doesn't end up getting murdered in order to spur the plot along. It is actually quite worrying when you think about it that way. But yeah, Ken at least gets his time with Eliza. Ryu, the main character, gets absolutely nothing. Like, it's basically just a reminder that, oh yeah, remember the Satsui no Hado, the martial arts equivalent of the dark side of the Force? Yeah, he's still suffering with that. It's like the absolute reverse, where all of the side characters are getting development and complexities added to them and get to move in new directions, whilst Ryu is stuck in the same plot line. It's getting kind of silly at this point. I mean, yeah, I get that you like the fact that it makes Ryu dark and edgy, but for goodness sake, let him move on. But this is all skipping and dancing around the main problem of this story, which is that, from what I understand, you can complete all of the story modes within an hour. That may sound odd, but there's a reason for this. The reason why I couldn't really clarify what Project Chains is because the story modes, it consists of about 3 fights and a series of short cutscenes, and then it just ends. Like, Chun-Li's story mode is, she's with this orphan, she has a flashback to her younger days, and then it's over. The stories feel more like previews. Like, they're like basic introductions to the characters, but nothing else. There's hints of a bigger plot going on, but there's no progression beyond that. And it's really weird. Like, this big new guy, I forget how to pronounce his name exactly, it's Necrol or something like that. His story mode is a prophecy that this sky will appear and then absorb the souls of the strongest warriors and then destroy the earth, and that's it, really. It's prophecy I hope doesn't come to pass. Again, that's it. It's like when you go onto Amazon or Google Books or something like that, and you see a book and you click on preview and you get like the first 3 pages or like the first chapter of a book in order to try and soak your interest and get you to buy it. That's what the Street Fighter V story mode is. It's previews for a later story. It's previews for a later story, an upcoming story, which is heavily implied to be in the DLC. And this is where we get to the major problem and why everyone is kind of willing to dismiss this story mode. And I honestly can't say I blame them, because, okay, Blaze Blue does this as well, where you have this big story mode that will end on a cliffhanger usually. But here's the thing, Blaze Blue, in each one of those individual stories, it sets up character development, it sets up growth, it has the characters, if it's not growth, at least big plot points that actually get you hooked on it, like a character making this big decision, or a character making a realization, or reaffirming what their goals are. And then, when you beat them all, it will open up this final story that acts as the conclusion to everything. And I honestly thought that's what was going to happen. So, when I first saw these story modes, I ended up searching YouTube desperately for a final story, figuring that, okay, if I look up final story, then this will be the thing that resolves everything. But no, it's not there. It's not included in the base package. You have to buy the DLC. And this is the part where I feel it's ridiculous, because what happens now is there are currently 2 planned waves of DLC based around 6 characters. At the moment, I believe the first wave is Alex, Ibiki, Yuri, Guile, and there are 2 others I forget off the top of my head, but basically all new characters who I assume are going to get their own story modes, and then once all of them have come out, that's when they're probably going to have the DLC with the final ending, which concludes everything. And you may have to forgive my crudeness on this, but that is the biggest load of bullshit I've ever seen. It's like, it is such a terrible way to tell a story, to basically go, ah, yes, here are some interesting concepts. You want to know what happens at the end? Well, we've got the ending here. We've got it away. It's hiding secretly. And you want to know what happens? Well, give us the money. Give us the money. Give us the money, and we will possibly let this story continue. It's just such a crap way of doing things. Like, I'm not opposed to DLC itself. In fact, DLC often does a lot of good things for stories. But, and this is the key thing, as an expansion. Like, if you want an example of what I think good DLC is, look at Hyrule Warriors. When you buy the base game, you get a large cast of characters and a core storyline that plays from beginning to end. If you decide not to buy any of the DLC, you will get a full, complete story on its own when you pay the initial 30 to 40 quid for the new game. Then the DLC comes out, and it will either be characters you can play outside the story mode, or an expansion. Like, one of the first things we got was an additional series of story chapters that told things from the villain's point of view, so you could see, oh right, that's why they were doing this, that's how they recruited that guy, etc, etc, etc. That, my friends, is good DLC, because it expands the story, fills in some gaps, but doesn't take away from the main experience. This, it's just carving it up into pieces and then selling it off. It's just, it feels like there's a really good story, but it's being butchered by the marketing department. It's greed. That's basically what it is. It's pure greed. It's so sad to see, because, yeah, the ending could still be really good. I could watch it and go, wow, this is such a great step forward for the series. Too bad the players have to go through so much BS just to get it. So yeah, the long and short of it is, the basic characterization is good, and the story has so much potential for greatness, but the marketing and the way they've been selling this story is just crap. If you want to drop the game for this, I can't say I blame you, because, yeah, I'm sorry, the initial game should have more than Chapter 1 in it. And that's all I have to say for now. I've been a Jonin Monkey, and until next time, cheerio.